very warm welcome to you guys, obviously also to you guys. It's a great pleasure for us at Berlinale Talents to welcome you tonight for, we could say producers talk, because we have great filmmakers, producers today on stage. Our topic this year is Listen Courageously, so we called this one Listen to Your Creative Core, Why Filmmaking Needs Courage. And we are very excited to find out what our terrific guests and also maybe you later in your comments have to, or questions, have to add on this. It is my great pleasure to introduce our guests. You might also know Sara Fazilat from her work as an actor, for example, in Holy Spiders of Ali Abbasi, but also from her feature Nico, which she co-wrote, obviously starred and produced. And she is also a dear Berlinale Talents alumna. So welcome back, Sara. And for the entire Berlinale, it's obviously a pleasure to have Cheryl Dunye back in the festival. I think you've watched her work here. The Watermelon Woman winning the Teddy Award here, so we were very happy to have you back. In the meantime, sorry for that, you also directed some series, which is also an interesting part, like Bridgerton or Dear White People. And right now you're working on a project on Gilda, with your production company, Jingletown. So we are very excited to hear more about this. Welcome so much. And also, last but definitely not least, Christine Vachon, back in the festival. Always a pleasure to have Christine and her films from Killer Films, this indie film powerhouse based in New York. We have her also as obviously producer of many works of our this year's international jury president, Todd Haynes, from Poison over Carol to recently May December, and also from our very last years here on the festival, Celine Song's Past Lives. I can't include everything here. Very earlier, I shot Andy Warhol and so on. Many producing credits that Christine has, and we are very, very proud to have all of the three of you here. So thank you guys for being around. We would like to introduce Sara's work first with a very little clip, and then also something from Cheryl, and then I'll leave the stage to let these ones do the magic. So please show us this Helsinki Sara clip. Thank you. I think we can be excited for this work, and now it's a pleasure in a very, very short way to rediscover something from Cheryl.
Hi everybody, welcome, and so great to have you all here. We prepared some questions. In the meanwhile, if there's a question that is referring immediately to something we are saying, raise your hands and I will try to give the mic to you. Otherwise, we will open at the end for the Q&A and you can ask whatever you want to. So actually, I was thinking about why I myself started doing all this kind of things and this kind of journey. And retro-wise, I figured back then, when I was a teenager, I was watching films which really had a huge impact on myself, like Malcolm X, Philadelphia, and stuff like that. They made me really active. And I started to connect with topics which were really far away from me because I didn't know anything about HIV and AIDS. And so this is the moment where I realized, wow, filmmaking has got a huge impact and a power of narration. And I was wondering, how is it about you? Can you remember, or do you know what was your need you started to going into filmmaking or telling story with this kind of media?
Which one of us do you want to?
Both of you.
Okay.
Whoever feels answers first.
So, obviously we've been talking a lot about our administration in the States, what's happening here, and one of the things that has really come into very sharp focus for me is, when Cheryl and I started out in the 90s, I guess the early 90s, late 80s, we were dealing with an administration in the US that also really felt like it wanted to absolutely discard its marginalized, its even slightly marginalized citizens. And what I think that did, and again, I'm coming to a point, I don't mean to be this, I don't mean to take such a long way there, but I think that what was happening, at least for me in the 90s, was there was a sense of urgency and a sense that if we didn't tell our stories, nobody else would. And that really fed the kind of filmmaking, the kind of practice that I engaged in as a producer. And I do feel, and this is my glass half full talking, like some of that is coming back.
200%. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to breathe right now and everywhere. Everybody just take a breath and hold yourself tightly. I think that's the most important thing. I was born in Liberia, raised in Philly, a child of everywhere, an immigrant and whatnot. So I was a latchkey kid, as they say, and that means I was opening the door and coming home and watching TV. Watched TV, watched everything, but it never saw me, so that was number one. And number two, I think I was in film school, I guess, some sort of version of film school. It wasn't called film school, but it was something like that. And, or I made up my own film school type of program, right? But it was really when Reagan was in office, and Reagan was running, and Reagan was using media to just totally twist stories around about inmates and police and whatnot. And I was like, hold it, wait. If he can do that, why can't I do this? So I really started to make my own images. I was video at the time, and it's twist things around and tell my stories on top of these images. So I was taking back, it's just really take back what's there and use it for myself. So it was beginning to sort of realize that media is it's political, and the personal is political, and I can use both of those things to tell my story, to put myself in the picture, because I never ever saw somebody look like me in anything on television, and definitely not in films. So that's where it started, and here we are now.
The one thing I'd love to add to that is I do think something that was incredibly empowering in those days was if you made a movie for, as exactly Cheryl says, for an underserved audience, they would show up, and they would show up in droves. And that was incredibly empowering because, when I made Todd Haynes' first feature, Poison, which was a very experimental movie, but people were so desperate to see, the LGBTQ, which we'll say, yes, were so anxious to see themselves on screen that they showed up. And even though a lot of them walked out, scratching their heads saying, I just wanted to see some boys kissing. Like, what was all that? It meant that, a movie like that could play right to that audience and make its money back.
Exactly.
And that meant you could make another one.
Yes, yes.
I totally agree and refer to that as well, because this is why I started going to film school and producing to make a change and to see the people I was missing seeing in films. But still, I always realized that there's like one step forward, two back. Like even the film, it was never planned that what you saw. And I was studying in New York at the Columbia, and then 1 year later we wanted to make the film. And at the end of the story is that actually Obama already put in the Muslim ban, and because I was born in Iran, I was not allowed to fly in, and they didn't tell me. So this is what I mean, like this is the whole thing within the world, what is happening around the world. You know, we have got these hopes, and things are happening, and we bring on things forward, and suddenly there's again another backlash. So I'm also asking always myself how to motivate myself and what to drive and how to continue. And I think it's a question we all have, no, about filmmaking. So what is the thing you when you're in this moment doubting everything and you're like, okay, fuck it, maybe I should go and study law because then maybe I can change something. What is the thoughts you've got you would like to share with us?
I have to remember the Cheryl that made the Watermelon Woman, and that you saw images of it, right? And I knew nothing about, like, I didn't know anything. You know, I came to the Berlinale with a short film called Greetings from Africa, which I had made video art at the time, and one of the videos was the projects that we were telling you about that I showed to the school and just sort of reappropriated things and put my own story and poems and things too, and that got me into this grad school program. And I had never made film. So when I wanted to make something bigger, I didn't know what to do. You know, I just sort of did it. I looked it up. I didn't go to grad school, film school, get training proper. I mean, it was literally a video artist. We had cassettes that you put in the thing and you stop and, I mean, it's craziness, right? So I had to, like, just go deep inside of myself and not cry and not, you know, I left the Berlinale after this, you know, first film that I made, played here in '94. I think Veland showed it, maybe he might remember that. I just cried. And the person I was with at the time said, "Stop crying, get up and do what you need to do." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And I did, you know, and I did go on, and my community came in and helped make the project and helped fill in the blanks. And it was just beautiful. And so I put my community in the film. The film is filled with everybody that I thought was important. Sarah Schulman, you know, Camille Paglia, whatever you want to think about her, Toshi Reagan, Gwen Turner. It was like all my Hollywood, my community. And I thought that was important. And so it is, and so it was important for me to use my community, put them there, bring those audiences in, and then knew that I could build on that, and people really liked it, and it became the first Black lesbian feature film, and I continue to have to remember that Cheryl did it without thinking about all these other things in the world. I just did it, you know, and so that's the courage, you know, it's just to remember, like, the, you know, young, not knowing what I'm doing, making mistakes, and turning to somebody else to say, you know, I don't know, help me. And they say, okay, step up, I'll help you.
Yeah, sometimes the power of not knowing what you're doing is just the best. So, now I've totally forgotten your question, except it had something to do with why not go to law school, and I'm like, I'm not going to law school. That ship has sailed.
It was about how to motivate yourself and to overcome your doubts.
Okay. I mean, you know, it comes back to a lot of what you just said. It's just like, what else are we going to do? And, you know, I was telling these folks that right before I came to the Berlinale, I was teaching at the film school for 3 days, and I like to do that. I like to teach it at a lot of film schools and speak to students, because it is inspiring, because despite everything, people still feel that connection to telling stories, and when you talk to young people, you know, it's like we talk about film in the 90s, and it sort of reminds me about, like, talking about, like, New York City, or probably any city. Like, anybody who talks about New York always says to you, you know, you missed the good New York. It was a few years ago. I'm sorry, you came after it was over. And people have been saying that since the beginning of New York. And people have been saying that about independent film. That was its heyday. That's when it was good. That's when it was really, really important. But what motivates me in a lot of ways is that I have accepted the fact that there's a lot of activity happening in storytelling that I don't know about, because I'm too old, because it's not on my radar, but there's something that's still driving people to want to tell their stories, and I think that's great.
Yeah. And referring to what you just said about the beauty of being at the beginning and just trying to go for it because you really feel the need of doing it, but how is it? Is there when the more success comes, how can you put this beside and have this naive first look at it to go for it, and put this beside of okay, failure or not failure? I would just want to go and tell maybe a totally different genre or totally different, yeah.
Sorry. Well, I started episodic in 2017, and you might have seen a little bit of that. I had never thought I would. I didn't know what I never thought of television at all. And luckily, a woman named Ava DuVernay, I don't know if people know who she is, tapped me to do Queen Sugar in a moment where I was a professor at San Francisco State University, so I was already sort of in another mindset of, teaching and whatnot. But she said, do you want to do Queen Sugar? And I love your work. And I was like, hell yeah. And so I did, and I made that jump. So it was courage there to go into a medium that I loved, that was the medium I was raised on, and try to make my mark. And when you're doing television, it's somebody else's show. So how are you going to make your mark on somebody else's show with a big budget, la 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 la? And so I just was like, I'm going to figure this out, right? And I think as I got deeper and deeper into it, showrunners or people who are running these shows, and people were hiring me to do, as Cheryl, to do something. So I was not able to run into Bridgerton and do talking heads. That didn't work, right? But it definitely was in there to change the background. Think about choreography, think about blocking different. So I was able to learn new things in a new way, make my funk on it, and still grow. And I think that's what happens with the times and the work that we do, is we can kind of keep trying to reinvent or invent or inject ourselves. And I'm not too sure if I even answered that question at all, but something might have dropped.
Yeah, no, I think so. And let's talk about marketing, because we all know how important marketing is for us producers, for the films, and so on. And because I also realized in the US that even before making the film, they put in the budgeting, the marketing money for the Oscar campaign. That's what they told me. No?
Not for an independent film, no.
Okay.
That's a longer conversation, but it is often something that is negotiated when you sell a film to a distributor. You negotiate will you get a Academy campaign, and what kind of money may be spent on it.
Okay, because that's what they told me. I was here in film school, and when I went there, I was totally okay, you guys think already about acting, music, or whatever, and put it in, how can you finance? Because we are happy to finance the film before we start thinking about the awards and stuff like that. But even as an independent filmmaker, you think about the marketing process, or do you?
Well, let me back it up a little bit. I think that because in the U.S., our films are market-driven, even independent films. They are all market-driven. So we have to think about our audience, and we have to think about, I have to think about every movie that I make. I have to think about its path to makeability. And what is on that path are the things that make it marketable/profitable, okay? I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I know that's a little bit, it's a little bit oh my God, it's art and you're talking, but I do think that one of the reasons I love cinema is because it does engage with an audience. And sometimes, present company excluded, I see in European, students or filmmakers, a disengagement with the audience, or a sense that the audience isn't important. And that is something that I just really believe that back and forth, as you see here at this film festival, at any great film festival, is what makes cinema come alive. So I guess going backwards from what you're saying, I almost feel like you're saying it like it's a bad thing. And I would say, I don't know, we don't put marketing in our budgets on independent films because we're dealing with what you're dealing with. We don't have the line item for that. I mean, have you ever done that? Right. So, I've never done that either. What we do, though, is we have to think from the beginning, who's this for? Who's going to see it? How are we going to get it to them? And how are we going to convince? How are we going to make the case every step of the way that this movie will have an audience? And as I said, I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think it's more for me, it's about also because I see you as well as an activist, as a filmmaker and activist. And for example, with Holy Spider, I figured out that, okay, on the one hand, it was great that we've got this film and this is making a visibility and awareness to women life freedom and what is happening there. But at the same time, it is somehow, it feels a bit like, okay, these people are suffering and literally dying there. And at the same time, filmmakers here are having an advantage from the film. And this is why I was a bit like, maybe it sounded so negative, because I'm thinking sometimes, what is the border that we can use it to push it forward and to bring these topics forward, but at the same time to somehow be in a humanity-wise, this was like, what was the question?
I don't know. I mean, I think, there's, this concept of wanting to make a project that is entertaining and good. And that's first and foremost for me, and finding a subject that's engaging. Yes, I do think it needs to reach people in places outside of my bubble, but I do think about all those things at once. I think about the world off the screen. I mean, you have to kind of think about, like, is this project able to live off the screen? And I mean it in the frame, and I mean it in the spirits of people. And that I also think about, can this project have people communicate afterwards? Is it going to resonate with people days and days on end? Is it going to something people are going to take away from it, or are they going to forget it? I mean, do you remember some of the stuff that you just watched 2 days, 3 days ago? Hell no. I mean, I can't remember the title or whatever. So I want things that people remember and can converse with and feel like they're a part of. So those are the things I think of, and if that's marketing, it is, but it's marketing to, again, my Hollywood, my people, right? And so I have to kind of think in my own bubble, outside of that bubble, and I think that's really important because nobody's really thinking about that. Nobody thinks about the black lesbian woman's opinion, I'm gonna make a film for her. I mean, this is not in any marketing plan, I'm at the bottom of that marketing concept, right? It's like, yeah, we gotta make sure that black lesbians gonna like it. Like, no way, that's not it. But I do, and that's why I do the stuff I do, and that's why then I think it reaches a lot of people. And what I do think about too is that I also think about, is it reaching somebody in Bombay? Is it reaching somebody in, wherever in the world? I want my stuff to be global, and that's really why I like the Berlinale, and that's why I like film festivals that are global, and that's why I'm outside of where I live, which is the Bay Area right now, and California is a beautiful place. Where California exists in that, statehood is not right now. So coming here is really important to remember I'm part of a bigger conversation that's global about telling stories, and they matter, period.
Guys, we're going to start to be disappointed if you don't clap after everything we say. So the only thing I was going to add to that is, I can't emphasize enough how important entertaining is. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I remember when I saw Watermelon Woman for the first time, I was like, this is so fun, And I think that audiences shy away from things that they feel are homeworky or spinachy. They don't want to be taught a lesson, right? And that's why I think it's really important, in some ways, the kind of thinking we have to do in the U.S., because we don't have subsidies. We really have to make our movies are all market-driven. We have to figure out, how do we do all of that? How do we figure out the message, the meaning, the activism, the politics, but also put it into a story that makes people, enjoy it, that is thrilling or funny or whatever it is.
Right, exactly. I mean, how can I make a project that, sad to say, like a black lesbian community of activists, separatists. At one point I was an anarchist lesbian feminist separatist. Don't get me wrong, I was. But how can I make a film for that group that also has, like tech bros who are interested in it too? And it's like, damn, what am I gonna do, But I found a project right now that I'm working on with Jürgen and Black is Blue about AI and robots and the future, and so you figure it out, right? So I got the plug, right? Boom.
Clapping, clapping, clapping. Okay, great. So before we were talking about that, you were saying you always refer to your 16-year, 20-year self, and what would you recommend from the perspective now to back then? What would you recommend to your 20-year,
20-year-old self
from the perspective you have now?
I would have said to young Cheryl, get the hell out of the United States quicker. I think that was really something that I didn't know. I'm trying to think when I first got a passport and used, again, I was born in Liberia, but the second time I was out of the country was Liberia too. But when I went as to the Land of Lesbian Feminist Separate, it was London. And I was in a squat with people and things like that. But I should have done it before. Why didn't I do abroad in college? Why didn't I leave when I could? So I always tell students, get the hell out of this program and go wherever else. Engage with the world. Do something other than your studies. Work at, right? Have experiences. That's the only way you can tell stories, right? If you're all, academic and literature and philosophy and schooled and booked, then you don't have any stories to tell. Make mistakes. Cry a little, have a little moment on the floor and rolling around. You can't get out of bed. Have something to tell. I got out of bed and I made I got better and I did something. Go through doors of yourself, transform. So I would have said, do it as soon as I could have. I did it early, but I could have done it earlier, but I think it did in the right time.
I would have said buy real estate.
Okay, meanwhile, are there any questions or should I continue or no? Okay. So how is it when because I sometimes have experienced that I've been working with people, I would say maybe we're not talking the same language because it's so bad to say, okay, it's a difficult person because maybe I'm difficult as well, I don't know. So what is what you do? Do you, because I've got also now by learning and doing, of course, things where I leave it because it's my lifetime. I don't want to be in this if we're so much not talking the same language. Why should I? Because it's like a marriage, no? Sometimes you were involved with a film 10 years, so why should we? What do you do? Do you think, okay, listen, but this is your job, just go and do it, don't think too much and don't be in your head? Or would you be rather yeah, true, it's your lifetime and choose wisely? And if you realize it's not going to get you somewhere, leave it because, yeah, I don't know. What's your approach on that?
I'm trying to figure out, I think what you're talking about is the team all making the same film, right? Is that sort of the gist? We make a lot of movies that take a very long time to get made. And sometimes that's just about one thing we have to be super aware of, because we are market-driven, is the zeitgeist. Right? And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes I'm like, oh, this movie the world wants to see this movie right now, and the world says, no, we don't. Actually, we're not that interested in it. And that can be devastating, you know? But sometimes what we do when that happens is we sort of put that movie, we don't put it in the trash, we put it on the shelf and wait for that pendulum to swing back to us. And right now I feel like, for example, you know, a lot of filmmakers have reached out to me here, and a lot of the projects that they're talking about, they're like, this is relevant right now because, and then, you know, fill in the blank. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I feel like as a producer, as a director, as content creators, whatever you want to call it, we have to have a real sense of what people are thinking and feeling. But we also have to be a little bit of fortune tellers, because we have to think of what they're going to be thinking and feeling a year or even 2 years from now, because sometimes it takes us that long. And when we get it right, it's glorious. But I don't always get it right.
Well, my wife turned me on to Chani. I don't know if any it was about Chani, or this is a woman who reads cards and has a.
Oh my God, my daughter
Chani.
is obsessed
Yes,
with that.
Chani's great.
Yes.
So tarot, runes, stones. I mean, we need to believe in something, you know. I mean, I think that those elements of. Oh no, okay. But I mean, like, I have to like have something that's outside, like, is connected to the spirit and the globe and the world as the world turns, you know, things that are bigger than me. And I think that I definitely consult with that other, you know, and consult with possibility that's outside of predictability. To do, again, it's taking chances, it's being courageous and just, you know, rolling and going with it. And so it does take a while. I mean, you know, am I making the right decision to make something now or not? Am I going to stick with it for the long term? You know, it's interesting right now, there are scripts that and projects, the Black is Blue project I'm talking about, I wrote that during the first Trump administration. Tried to, you know, get it around. Nobody wanted it. They were like, ugh, black trans, the future, in Oakland, tech, no. But now that I bring it out again, people are like, hell yeah, why didn't we? You know, it's like, all right, you know, come on. And so it's, again, timing. But it's, again, writing it then when you have the fire. It might, and then write something else or do another project around it. Like, fill up the gaps in yourself around it, create the culture around your project to keep it alive. And which I did. I mean, I just keep on doing different things about it. Maybe it's sound around it. Maybe it's drawing around it. Maybe it's doing something else around it that, you know, it fulfills you and helps you, inform you more about that topic. And then it will come around, you know. But I think you stay pointed on it, as well as spin another plate. You know, I say right now I'm spinning lots of plates, and you have to kind of spin plates as an artist, as a creator, as a producer, as a director, whatever you want to call yourself. As a creative, you spin a lot of plates all the time. Some break, and you pick it up another one, you keep spinning it, you know. And that's the whole thing. You have to have plate spinning constantly. And you have to have that energy constantly. And you have to figure out a way to do that again. If it's washing dishes, spinning plates and breaking them, or if it's, you know, being involved, you know, as this person behind the camera there is doing something, you know, or somebody who's picking up dishes somewhere in a restaurant. You have to do something to engage with the world and keep yourself going as you like look and think and predict and grab, because I'm extracting from you. You're extracting from me right now, so I'm extracting from you. It's a back and forth it's a relationship we're creating. Left, right, we're relating to each other and are partners in this moment. So we take from it and we kind of, you know, remember and go on. So I'd use those things to endure and keep going until it hits. Long answer.
I totally agree, and I think everything is energy. And I, for myself, have got these moments when I have got this thing, I'm like, okay, give me a sign if this is the right way I'm going. And it's not a random sign coming. It's really like there was this thing happening. I was doubting and I was not sure. And then I got an audition for a thing, and I knew I'm going to act with J.K. Simmons, who is one of my lifetime heroes. And then I was like, okay, and then I got the part and we got to work together. And this was a sign, so I was like, okay, either we're living in a matrix or this is somehow really helping me, you know? So I think it's important to have this kind of things, whatever it is, which is giving you the energy to continue even in the moments of self-doubt or whatever. And at the same time, I was thinking about, because when I did the Rotterdam lab, we had also, and this is something we don't talk much about in the industry, I think because everything is always fabulous and we just see not the failure, we see the success. And there it was talking about work-life balance. And I also figured, like, okay, as an independent filmmaker, last year I figured I haven't been in vacations for 10 years. And I tried to find my spots. I've been out just 3 weeks to Sri Lanka, connected to nature and animals, and my mom like, what are you doing? Are you sure? And now I'm back here, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? So what are the things, or when did you start? Because I'm starting now, and I'm still somehow in between. I just left film school, and now I'm approaching in the middle, but now figuring, okay, I have to stop being such a workaholic, and sometimes I have to, but sometimes I have to make vacations and connect to nature and animals, and then come back with new inspirations.
Okay, so I don't know about you, Cheryl, but as I say, I speak at a lot of film schools and speak to a lot of students. And just like a few years ago, I started to get, I always take questions. A few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, somebody raised their hand, and it was the first time I heard, like, so can you talk about work-life balance? And my answer was like, and I was like, can I talk about what now? And I think the way we grew up in the industry, and we both had kids, and I think we both had careers very much on our own terms, which we were very lucky to be able to do. But I do think this idea that you were supposed to balance life and work never occurred to me. I respect young people who talk about it and think about it and want to make it part of their lives. And it is slowly, very slowly, but it is permeating, I think, the way we make movies. The way people have made movies in Europe for years. I remember when I made my first film in Europe, which was Velvet Goldmine in the UK, we were told, well, people want to go home at this, at the end of it. And I was like, well, yeah, but if we pay them overtime, which is what you do in the US. And they were like, no, they just want to go home. And I was like, what? So that philosophy, which I absolutely believe is the right one, is starting to make its way across the Atlantic. Mm-hmm. But the film industry still is what it is, which is a workaholic industry. Yeah, and TV too.
And TV is workaholic, right? They do buy overtime. They do abuse people. So, it's awful television in the States, I would say. When I did Bridgerton, they had to ask every department if they wanted to go overtime, and some said no, so we rolled. Everybody said, you will be home at 6 or 7 for dinner. I was like, what? I'm usually on the set till 11, 12, or whenever, 2 or whatever, so we make our day. But I actually, at this moment, adding up the numbers of my life and adding up what I want to do and my dreams and things like that, it's like, okay, I have about 10, good years of doing stuff before I want to do what my line is. When I grow up, I want to, because this is what I'm doing now, but when I grow up, I want to play the guitar. There's all these other things I want to do. And when am I going to get to do them? I can't do them right now while I'm doing this stuff. So I want to figure out a time that I could stop doing this stuff, turn it over, and then okay, I want to, learn how to do furniture making. There's other things I want to do before I can't do it. And I start to think.
Furniture making?
Yes, okay. I'd love to do right? All right. Think about a nice chair. Oh my gosh, again, I'm watching some of the stuff that I saw and what the talents are doing, and I must say, the talents I saw yesterday, clap for yourselves. I saw some of that amazing work what y'all were doing, so I'm clapping for you, right? I was like, damn, I want to learn how to do that. You know, damn, like I want to learn something else other than what I know now. Yeah, and when can I do that is I have to do what I have done on my slate. And so the energy right now is to get that done, but then there has to be a stop point. I do not want to be like hobbling over and here I'm trying to, I can't do that. I don't want to be that person. I need to have a cutoff point where I'm like doing something else for me that I like to do, that's quiet, that's crafty, that sustains me in a different way and calms me the fuck down. Sorry, my French there.
You raised your hand, no? Back there, no? Yes? Okay, I thought so. No, okay, good. So you were also telling us about, well, before we were talking about courageousness, about the new projects you're going to do, and what you would like to share with us about the next one? And also, there's something coming up together?
Yeah, but we can't talk about that.
Okay.
Sorry, kind of silence. I'm here working, I got into Cinemart in the Rotterdam with old friends who are Martin Rabert, who now is running Cinemart. He's a wonderful guy. I was in the Binger lab when I lived in the Netherlands with him, and now he's the head of Cinemart, which is the Rotterdam Film Festival is amazing. And so I was a project in there, and it's called Black is Blue, and it's about a black trans man, a black trans woman, and an android, and it's sort of a riff on Sunset Boulevard. And it's set in where I live in the Bay Area, which is crazy AI technology. And I'm working with friends and family and people that I know. I'm working with a few people who are in this room, Jürgen, and there's Alex, and there's Karina, and Julia, and Gil. So I created a team already around me as we go out to try to find funding, as we go out to try to use our different energies and our different selves to make it. So I can actually step back and do my creative work, which is really make a beautiful image, make a beautiful project, and try to raise the money for that. Because nobody wants to make a black trans man, black trans woman, and an android feature film, right? You know, it's like crazy. So I do the crazy things that I want to do because of, people, and I need people to do that. And yeah, period.
Okay, great. We would open up now for any other questions of yours. Yes, over there was first. There's a mic from the right side coming.
Hi, I just wanted to know how you decide or how you know where to put your energy and like which project to work on, like what thoughts are going into that, or how do you see, okay, this is definitely what I'm going to spend the next 2 or 3 years working on?
For us, it really is what I sort of referred to a little bit before, which is this this idea of what makes something makeable. Because, we have Cheryl's a director, so her scale, I don't mean to speak for you, but presumably, you have your plates in the air, but I can have more because I don't have to have the same focus you have to have on every single project. Exactly. So I can have more plates in the air, and what I have to look at with each one is what's the path? How do we figure out how to get this done? What are the elements that will make it what we kind of say, which sounds a little highfalutin, but it's true, what makes it inevitable? What are the things that make this movie unassailable, or television project or whatever it is, And that's, all of those things, I'll use as an example the project that I can't name with Cheryl, which is, it was so clear when we kind of, all met on the subject matter, the path forward, what it was going to look and feel like. It was like, this is a slam dunk. This is clear, right? I know what this is going to look like and feel like, and I also know that I can sell it. You know, I know that I can, and in fact, we did.
Yep.
So, so that's, that, you know, that doesn't mean that we don't have projects that we've been toiling over forever, but it does mean that at a certain point, if I see that the path isn't working, I may decide to take it off.
And then for me, with the project that I'm working on that we can't talk about, I have other projects, right? I have other things that I'm wanting to do and make sure that I've optioned a couple other novels. I have other directing assignments that I'm working on with other producers that are not set up yet, meaning that they're still trying to find their funding. And I've signed on to it to be the director. So, you know, it's almost like going to a casino or something and trying to have luck, or scratchers. I love scratchers. You know, it's like, damn, okay, I won. You don't know, right? But you try every once in a while, you know. So I keep trying, and I keep my ideas flowing, and I keep reading, and I keep, being turned on by the world. I think the turn on is really important, right? And I think I have to kind of constantly be turned on to making sure that I am engaged with what I'm doing and am engaged with what I am going to do, right? And if it doesn't have the turn on, then maybe it can fade away, you know?
I just have to say, I think what Cheryl just said is extraordinarily important, because I think being open to new experience, new kinds of storytelling is really the anti-cynicism. And one of the worst things that can happen to you in this business, especially in the States, is becoming cynical. Because it's just so easy. It's just like, it's so hard. And cynicism just destroys creativity, in my opinion. So the only way, I can combat it is to just watch as much as possible and allow myself to be as surprised as possible.
There was one, yes, it was you, I think, with...
Hi, so I'm a queer, that was really loud. I'm a queer screenwriter. Let's just say I've got a hell of a lot to say about life, and I'm very, very fired up with everything going on in the world. My question would be, well, when I have a blank page in front of me, I can write whatever the hell I like, and it's a very powerful feeling. I find myself preaching as I write. Because I think there are some humans walking around on this rock that we live on who really need to be preached at. My question would be, have you ever experienced that feeling in your films? And if so, how do you hold back? And how do you really say what you want to say whilst allowing the audience to also figure it out for themselves?
So is preaching words, or is preaching a shot that you track in on slowly, and there's no words? Like, you have to figure out what the preach is, right? And that's where if it's words, then it's a problem, I think, all the time. Sometimes words are right? Preaching, right? But sometimes preaching is like very soft, and it's just like, there's a repetition with a rhythm, or it's just a static shot, or it's an edge of a frame. I mean, you have to think about like preaching not being in your face, but subtle. So I don't think you want to I don't want to hit people over, because I have a lot to say, obviously. But I don't think, I know having tried to say it bang, bang over the head doesn't work all the time. So I have to figure out like other ways to slip it in, Again, a turn on, sorry.
And I'm wondering, is it not always somehow preaching? Like every scene we show is somehow, it depends what is your definition of preaching. But if we want to tell something, and every picture we are showing is somehow, you're showing something we experience or we see. You don't agree?
No.
Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
no one likes to be preached to. Nobody. I don't. You know, the second I feel like I'm being preached to, I immediately take the other side. You know, so I think it's really. I mean, I kind of go back to what you were saying before when you said nobody. You know, like who cares about the Black lesbian experience? But the fact is, if you make a movie that is truly authentic about the Black lesbian experience, then they're all going to show up because they're going to be like, God damn, finally. And then that authenticity will allow it to spread out to everybody else. And that's the trick to me, telling an authentic story. Telling people what they should think or they should feel never works.
I think we had two more there, and then one, and now two in the front.
I already have a microphone, so I'm going to start. Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm a screenwriter from Germany. I just wanted to ask, because Sara, you already mentioned it, failure. I really like to talk about failure because I feel like sometimes, especially as creatives from certain minorities, I identify as a Black woman, minority in Germany as well. Sometimes it's really hard to stay authentic, and also it's a lot of responsibility to be the representation, like the single representation for this entire group. And sometimes I feel like it's really easy also to fail, or I feel like I face so many people every day. So what were your biggest failures in your career, and how did you learn from those failures?
I've got something. When I'm not listening to my gut feelings, I really realized that when I was like, no, let's go that way, that sometimes it really led me into things where I was like, what the fuck? Why? I knew it from the beginning. Yeah.
The anger of being the Black person in the room, the Frantz Fanon, touch the whatever, and like, oh my God, there's a Negro here. I'm almost 6 years old, and I still have that, right? And so it's like, how can I not engage with that? How can I find ways to not do that and have that reaction? It's hard. It's very hard, no matter where I am in the world. I mean, you could be queer in a room and white, or you could pass, whatever it is, and nobody knows. But if you're Black in a room, you're always, if you're another color in the room, you're always going to be that. And so no matter if you're queer or whatever, now if you're the Queens, Kings, English, or all this and that. So that's very difficult. And how do you keep that, inside and still be graceful and still be productive? And I feel that that's a charge that I deal with daily, Elevators. Ooh, elevators are scary places, people. Sometimes, right? It's just really hard places. But I remember that I have work to do. I remember I have the power of the pen or the typewriter or whatever it is. I can be creative. I can engage with the experience differently. I can meditate. Meditation is very important.
Work-life balance.
Ooh, meditation. I mean, it's just like daily. You have to give yourself 20 minutes of freeing your head up from that, and I think it really helps. And again, you have the ability to translate that into something else that matters. It's a scene. It's a stroke on a canvas. It's a sound. How can you translate that to something else that's just not that way, that communicates with people outside of that ism in a different way? So I try to think about like, what is that, those core feelings, what happened there? How can I retell it in a different way? And how to be creative about it, because it's, you can't, there were moments where that would kill me, really kill me and fail me and have me just wind down and not want to do anything and just be negative, and I just have to not do that anymore. But it still happens. Again, it still happens, and luckily I'm in a space where I can sort of, again, meditate and take time out and know that I have a greater good, and I have a community that looks like me, acts like me, doesn't look like me, but feels like me, that I can communicate that with. I'm a human, and I like my human community, and I really want to make work with that community. And again, it's varied, but we're all spiritually the same. So I turn to those folks, and I find some energy and strength.
I've made over 125 movies, so we've had plenty of failures, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, every time we make a movie, and it doesn't work for whatever reason, we have a million reasons of why it didn't work. You know, the poster was wrong, the trailer was bad, they didn't spend enough money, they didn't spend enough money in the right place. The one thing we never say to ourselves, because we don't ever really believe it, is maybe people just didn't want to see it. You know? Maybe they just didn't want to. And that's the hardest thing. I really believe that if you decide to have a long career, and at some point, it's not even like you decide, you just realize that you have. You kind of have to believe, I have to believe, that eventually great work finds its place to the top. And I really do believe that. And one of the things that, because of, streaming and everything we can find online, is every year one of my old movies gets kind of rediscovered by people. Sometimes it's obvious, like Kids or Boys Don't Cry, but sometimes it's less obvious. And people are like, oh my God, I saw this movie, and I realized that you made it, and it was life-changing, and that's a great feeling, that things can live for so long. I 200% agree. It comes around, and you don't even know why you made it, and it failed, or it didn't even fail. It doesn't make any noise. And then the timing. There's times in the world where things click, but you need to put it out in the world so they can click. And you need to put it out in the world so people can discover them that need to make the click, right? That can make that sound. So I think really you have to just do it, let it go, close that door, and do something else. Yep. Yeah. And if you don't keep closing doors and doing something else, then you're not, think about it.
And I think also not to let the fear of the others, which they project on you, get room to not go for your vision. This is also something I feel really, just believe in yourself. I mean, it's always like, believe in yourself, blah, 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 but really, no, believe in yourself.
I love that.
Okay, I'm not sure if there was another one there, and then we've got here two down there and one there.
Hey, thank you. I want to ask about genre in queer cinema, because my dream is to make genre queer cinema, but I feel like the expectation is queer cinema equal melodrama. And here in Europe, I live here in Berlin, the expectation also is, here we don't make movie, we make cinema art. You talked about it a little bit before. So, Cheryl, you are now working on something that sounds to me like sci-fi movie or adjacent, and I want to ask, how it's like to make a genre queer cinema.
I love genre. I love every genre almost. Oh, I love them all, actually. Okay. Never mind. I'm learning to love them all even more, right? I mean, some of them just seem complicated to me. I mean, but I'm making something that's film noir. And once I inject myself into it, becomes, and the project and the subject becomes trans film noir. Ooh, isn't that sexy, right? So, or I've never seen people who look like me, act like me, even though film noir is filled with all those type of things. And it's a great way to kind of candy coat or go underneath what the problems are on the surface. I love genre, and I play with genre. So I think you can always find a way to inject yourself into a particular genre, and you should go for it. I love comedy. People think I'm drama, but I love comedy. And so I do things comedic. You'll know yourself, and you can't sort of escape yourself to do the things that you need to do. So I would say, again, the subject is being courageous, go for it. Like, what's going to happen if you don't? It's going to be like you've been wanting to do it. So do genre work, make it kind of queer it up. There's so many things to do. I don't know what your genre is. I've seen your wonderful project, so I know that you have a funny in you. So it might be comedy. So why don't you, just, and what I always say is start small and doable, right? Make a short. It could be done and you can move on, right? So start small if you're gonna play, especially if you have to play with your own pockets and try to make it. And then you can, sort of test it out. You're already into a wonderful festival and you have audiences already, then, there's something there for them to taste you more and see that you can play with things and it kind of gets bigger. So, yeah, don't not do that genre that you want to do.
I mean, all I would add to that is genre has always been the place where you can slip in like all kinds of, commentary on politics, the world, race, gender, etc. That has been where it lives for a very long time, and I think it's exciting, and I think that there's a whole new generation of filmmakers who are taking genre and really figuring out ways to make it as subversive as possible.
Agreed.
And it's coming. I think it was last year, was a cuckoo here at the Berlinale, which was like, and it was told as a matter of fact, the queerness, the trends and everything. So I think there is the room and people want to see it, but we need the courage to just do it. So go for it. I think before that one we had over here two, and there, and then, yeah.
Thank you. And my question is about the growing pains of a filmmaker. And for example, you mentioned getting out of your country. My question is, what is your advice for people who just left their countries, made enormous sacrifices to go into film school, and once they're there, they're disappointed by the film school? What would...
Which film school are you in?
Better not say it in public. But
I think you don't have to compare, you cannot compare the other film schools. Maybe the other film schools would disappoint you as well. And maybe it's about what you can take out of it and then take the lemons and make lemon juice or something like this, Lemonade, I'm sorry.
Lemonade, elevate.
Okay, but I think this is the thing. What do they offer you? I had it the same. I had also moments where I was like, okay, what is it? But at the same time, that you can find these things. And even if it's a sparring partner, you can find who is leading you to something. And, so it's, I think, maybe starting with yourself instead being of, okay, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Look what you can take out of it. This would be my advice.
We just discussed, neither of us went to film school. I didn't go to film school. And I have very mixed feelings about film school, which, are too long that would, turn this into a seminar on that. But the one thing I do believe that people do take away is a cohort and a sense of community. Yep. And that is something that I feel is essential to making movies. And Cheryl's talked about it a lot. You don't have to go to film school to get that. But it is something that you can get from going to film school.
Access to equipment.
Absolutely.
End of story. That's your thing. Go in with a plan. Hate your film school. Hate it to the deers. But then have a plan how you're going to take that equipment out every weekend and shoot the hell out of it, That's it. I mean, it's access to equipment. Because I don't have the money to have access to equipment. You don't want to invest in access to equipment.
And if you're in Germany, you've got equipment, because back then in Colombia, they didn't even have equipment. They pay 50K for a semester. In my film school in Germany, we paid 200 euros for a whole year. And we got the equipment and we got a bit of money to make the films, So I think everywhere has got pro and cons. There was another, okay.
I just was going to say, when I spoke at her film school like 10 or 15 years ago, the head of the film school said to me, I want you to tell the students that in America, they have to pay for film school and they have to finance their own movies. So I did, and the students all went,
Hi. So I'm also trying to be a filmmaker, as Cheryl said, like maybe 30 years ago. I've been living here for a couple of years yet. Where I'm actually from, censorship limits trans storytelling. And then my mind always drifts to trans allegories. And The Matrix is one example. From last year, we had I Saw the TV Glove. And I remember Harinef's comment on Safe, maybe reading it as a queer allegory. I wanted to ask, what do you think about allegory in queer storytelling generally? Yeah.
So tell me exactly what your question is, because...
Generally, like, what do you feel about hiding another story?
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, there's so many ways to read every kind of movie. And yes, I would say Safe is very much a queer text because Todd made it, he made it to respond to the AIDS crisis, but it came under a lot of criticism at the time, actually, because a lot of people felt that it wasn't being specific enough. The movie has lived way past those borders in some ways because he wasn't specific, because he decided to make a movie about illness and about how we as a society deal with illness and how we locate fault and responsibility and all of those things, because he was watching this terrible thing happen and seeing all the different ways that it manifested itself in how we treated each other. So I think Safe was particularly brilliant in that sense. And a lot of those people who, were good people who just were like, I want a story, I want a story that names it. I want a story where I see somebody dying like I'm seeing somebody dying in my life, which I totally understand. But at the same time, Safe lives on as a result. And we can take it each year and say, Safe got a huge spike during the pandemic. Suddenly I was getting all these emails from people who are like, I just saw this movie for the first time. Oh my fucking God. Like, it feels like it was just made. And that's not the only hallmark of a great movie, but it can be one.
Yeah, that's what you want. I mean, we were talking about this, like, how can you make something that's accessible for everyone? I think you need to push to the bigger idea. Like, if you're saying, I need this to be specific about this thing, and you can make that story, I mean, you have to think about what medium you want to use. And I think as an artist, I think we're all artists here, or hopefully, or not, doesn't matter. But sometimes it might not be the right medium. Maybe you need to make a song, maybe you need to make a painting, whatever. But if you're gonna make a film that you want to resonate and last for a while, you need to kind of push it to its biggest, broadest thing, so everybody can have access to it, so it can live on forever, and so it does poke at what you would really specifically want it to do. So keep pushing further out and finding the bigger loop connections in. It'll go into your story, but then it'll kind of always beam out longer and bigger and have longer rays of light. I think you want to have the brightest shine, on the world when you have this one moment or many, many moments, but it's one moment you're having right this moment. How can you have that brightest ray? Let me make it a little bit broader, and let me kind of push further out with this specific thing that I want, but let me make it so accessible, and then we go into audience, we go into market, we go into all these things that, you know, make it more accessible or engaging for around the globe. And then it does weave through those terror mechanisms of censorship and all the things that we're sort of dealing with right now, because they can't really pinpoint it. Oh, well, this is a film about, I remember when the Watermelon Woman was attacked on the House floor when it came out, and those were the days, right? And it was Peter Hoekstra who kind of stood up and said, "This is about black lesbian. We used people's money to make this film. I received this grant." And then Sheila Jackson Lee, who's no longer with us, stood up and she said, "But this is about art. This is about something bigger. This is about somebody talking about something beautiful, about identities and culture and history. And you can't say that this is about specifically, you know, lesbian and sex and all this and that." And so they decided not to defund the NEA, $31,500. That's crazy, right?
I also had the experience that when you have this this approach, you really have the need to tell something. It's an honest need you have to tell. Then you connect to no matter who. Because it's the same what I was telling about Philadelphia before, that I was connecting to a white man with HIV and I didn't know anything. It's not about identifying myself because I see myself. And then years later, I had a film with the protagonist, which was a BPOC woman, and a white man came towards me and was like, "This is my story." So I think if there's really this honest approach, you can connect to everything and everyone.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's why.
I mean, I would say in some ways the reason why Past Lives was such a success is because everybody thinks that movie is about them.
Yep.
You know? And literally, I introduced Celine Song to Steven Spielberg at the Academy lunch, which you get to go to when you're nominated. And he said to her, "That movie's about me and my wife." And that's it.
Okay, there's definitely one there, and I was not sure if there was also another. No? Okay. Yeah.
Is it
two?
me?
We've got two here.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Okay. So I made a movie recently where people talk about their favorite sex scenes, and Watermelon Woman was mentioned. So I know that this might be hard to answer on the spot, but I wanted to take my chance and ask the panel, do you have a favorite sex scene from film history? Or if you can't come up with one, what do you think is a good or makes a good sex scene?
I know there was tequila involved in my sex scene, so that's all I could say. And we closed the set. And there was no thing called an intimacy coordinator when I did it, and this is back in the day.
That is a new thing.
That's a new thing. So that's one. I think being covering a lot of different things, especially if you have this one moment that you're gonna, you know, close the set or bring people around and do this thing and convince everybody to do it. Make sure you use as many means, like get on the floor, up on the bed, spin around, like whatever you want to do it all at that moment so you can make those decisions in post. I would say just, again, give yourself options. You don't know what's going to work until you have cut the film around that, you know, with the sex scene in it. And I'm not going to talk about my favorite sex scene.
I was thinking because at my film school there's a seminar for sex scenes, and yeah, but I can just remember that we had this discussion that I was like, I want to have something that is surprising and not like what we know, and then we had this weird discussion about, okay, but how is it possible? Because I was like, okay, what about if the woman is fucking the man? And then a man was saying, no, but this is not possible, and then we had this weird discussion, and so I think I would go for what is surprising me in the sex scene and not reproducing what I'm always seeing. Maybe that. Before we had here another one. Oh, okay, you go.
Hi. Here in Germany, we have a generous, almost generous system of funding. So, and then people decide what stories needs to be told. So and in the U.S., they are thinking what stories can be sold. So what I see in the U.S. is that, for example, poverty, which is the same reason that now Trump is like white poverty, that is like a big issue, and they are frustrated and they feel unseen. It's very difficult to find films, American films about poverty, I guess because it doesn't sell, because people don't want to see poverty. So how should Americans fill this gap between what they can sell and what they really need, and people need to see?
See, by saying need, you lost me. Because film is not about what you need. You know, then we're talking about spinach and homework. I actually disagree with you. I think there's a lot of movies about white poverty. I mean, dear Lord. There are more movies about white poverty, I would say, than like any other kind of, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of TV about it. There's a lot. I completely disagree with you. I don't believe that we make movies as medicine. I just don't. It's an art form that should, first and foremost, be entertaining and put you in tell a story that is potentially life-changing. But when you use the word need, you lose me.
Okay, but then this cultural disaster that happens in the U.S., don't you think that media and art and everything fails people?
I mean, our cultural disaster sure has a heck of a lot of movies about white poverty in it. In fact, I would say that's
what it's about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think you can talk about our cultural disaster without actually being in it to the degree that, I mean, you can talk about it. Of course, you can talk about it. But I don't think you understand really what American media is right now if you say something like that.
Okay.
I don't know, but I think because you referred to the German funding, and I feel also like that it's maybe they don't know what you want. You need to know what you want to tell, and tell them what you need to tell. Because I had also the experience with my graduation film, which is called Nico. The name was supposed to be Nico because it has to be gender neutral and don't have a country or something behind it. Because me as an actress, I always get offered, like, you will be called Aisha, and if you're not wearing a scarf, your husband is going to burn you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, wait on. My name is Sarah, and I grew up here, and I've got the need, and we didn't do it with funding, because everybody was like, no, but what is the migration story? Where are the parents from? And I was like, sorry, but if I'm talking about a white person in my film, am I talking about the Nazi background in Germany, about this? Why do I have to tell where the parents are from? And stuff. So you have somehow to convince the people and the funding what is necessary to be seen, because you have the need, just to use the word in a different definition, you have the need to tell the story. And then it went out like everybody's like, we showed the film everywhere in London. People were crying, and we're like, oh my God, this is my story. Like, what you get? So I think this is more important. What is the need you want to tell, and then convince the rent that it's really important. And it is, because you've got a voice, you have to use it.
And just with all due respect, with all the funding that you have here, I mean, it's not like you guys are in much better shape than we are at the moment.
23rd, it's going to be election.
Hello. I mainly am switching a little bit the topic to more joyful, maybe. I wanted to first and foremost say thank you, because you two actually were important parts. So I'm a producer, and I'm also running a small film society of queer feminist films. And so you two were very important people throughout the past years, from discovering like, oh my God, there's female producers over you wrote books. And then I discovered, I was like, oh my God, producers write books about their work. And then I realized, well, there's not enough, maybe, but it's still like something you can, well, they're a little bit old, not the internet time yet, so it was funny to read certain things in it. But, like even reading about experiences, every film project is different, everything we do is different, our systems are different, everything's different. Anyways, but it's still like the opportunity to read and to learn out of it, so that was very important. And discovering the Watermelon Woman was also very important. Seeing a main cast of black lesbians and I mean everything. So I just wanted to say thank you because, yeah, well, you were very important on my way. Well, thanks.
Two more there, one more here. This it? So I think it's going to be the last 3-4 questions.
Hello, thank you for being here. I was just curious, like both from the producer perspective and the writer-director perspective, what do you think is the most important thing in entering kind of a partnership, like as a producer and a filmmaker? Like what do you think leads to successful projects working with someone?
The story, having a great story that you all are excited about and agree, and that you all share and have a way to tell that story. Have, like, I can do this, and I can do that. Like we all can do something to make that story, bring it to life. So if we're all excited about that story, then we'll all stick with it. So, but if we're not excited about it, oh God, then nobody's, don't work with that person. It's because it's a relationship forever, right? It's a forever relationship, and there are harder moments of it, and there are moments that excel, and there are bad, sad moments. But you need somebody who's still like excited about it when it's the hardest time. So the story has to resonate with you, has to stick with you, so you can be that cheerleader or that cheerman or whatever cheerperson. When in the darkest days of it, right? So.
I will also add, for me, I'm figuring it out at the moment, but also speaking the same language in terms of values. This is also where I realized this is really valuable for me to see if we are having the same values in terms of humanity and how to work together. There was, yeah, here in the front.
Thank you dearly for being here at the Great Film Festival. It's a celebration. Thank you very much. I have a very practical question, more for you, Madame Vachon, about Prince of Salt, Carol. Okay, I'm a big fan from Patricia Highsmith. I like the film with Anna Donald and Mr. Replay. It was a big challenge to make that film. And your very good relationship, friendship with Todd Haynes since you were at Brown together. But it must have been moments you say you're not going to be able to make that film, right? Especially they tried to make this it was a biography a little bit from Patricia Highsmith about her life, and the book came 52, and then in the 90s you started.
That's actually, just to be clear, Todd and I came on to the project very late in its life. We actually did not develop it. Todd did a fair amount of development once he signed on, really, as Cheryl spoke about, like he signed on to the script and made it his own. But by the time we came on, it was financed or almost financed. We sort of brought the last piece in. So it wasn't the two of us. Other projects, yes. But that one, it wasn't the two of us that were, pushing it uphill with our nose.
To do something.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I remember when Phyllis was talking to me about the project.
And to Rose.
And to Rose.
And to Kim Pierce.
I was talked to be a director of it long ago. And I did I'm a Highsmithian, I would say. I love Patricia Highsmith, right? 1950s, who doesn't, right? But I don't think...
Except for some of her, like,
Oh, right. Well, there's a lot of problems, but with that novel, there was something magic in the way that she was working on it, and she approached all of us. She approached all of us, you know. So when it got to where, like, again, there's a moment, there's a timing, there's a team, there's this, like, this cracks. But the person who wrote it, who had that who optioned it, right, who was trying to make it happen, stuck with it, and that was the moment, right? And you know, that's what happened, you know. I
Absolutely.
That's about it, really.
There and here we had. These are the last, the last two questions. Back there and in the front.
Hi, I study set design, and my question is, have you ever felt alone with your idea? Have you ever felt like, okay, I have this idea, and I don't know who the fuck wants to do that, but like, how did you find an ecosystem, or like the people you want to co-work with, or the people you felt like were inspiring, or you inspired, and that created the films that you wanted to make, and like, how did you find that process of making your ideas work with other people?
I think being a creative person, who I am, I speak, you know, I would say I'm cray-cray, you know, so I'm like, I don't know, all the time. Like, I'm spinning and pitching and always talking and just living out loud a lot. So it's easy to have me say something in a group that people will go like, and then, okay, let me try something else, you know, like, but then that idea goes down. So I never sort of stop going at something that, I think that the idea or the approach to it might not be right, and I try to think of another way to kind of tell it. I don't get lonely with my ideas. I think that I just try to figure out another way to deal with them, because they'll keep, like, if an idea is working for you, you just have to figure out the right medium to tell it in, the right people to tell it to, how to tell it. But if it stays there, you have to kind of keep trying to find that right. Like, you might think that it's supposed to be a film or a poem or a book or whatever, and maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it should be a film. So you have to figure out the right way to do it. Or, you know, in design, it's like maybe it's a different color, or maybe I need to go up instead of down. Like, you have to figure out another way to approach that darkness. Maybe darkness should be light. Maybe it should be yellow, right? You have to kind of keep at it, but, you know, I think that's the important thing, is trying to stay with it and hold it, but, you know, spin it different ways. And then don't stop. Again, these are projects I'm working on right now that I put down, and I'm picking them back up and seeing if they work. I mean, I still have other scripts that people won't see the light of day, but maybe they will. You know, it's time to resurrect a lot of stuff that I thought that didn't work, and maybe they work now. So just, you know, don't stop believing. Get me to the karaoke moment, so you don't want to hear
And
that.
also did things like Berlinale Talents, Rotterdam Lab. Like I have team members from Berlinale Talents on my last film. Now I'm co-producing with a producer from Nepal, which I met at Rotterdam Lab. I think these are good things to get to know people who have got maybe the same drive and want to tell the same stories as you want. Okay, we've got the last one here in the front, and then we call it a day, no?
Hi. I wrote it down, so I'm going to read it. As a young, queer creative who migrated to US and then 3 years ago migrated to Germany, now with the political atmosphere both in US and here, the line kind of starts to get a little blurry. And I've been trying to decide whether I should move back to US or I should stay here. And I was going to ask you, how do you know where the right place is for you to tell the stories, like queer stories, for example? Like, I can't figure out where is the right place for me to tell my story, physically, if that makes sense. I don't know. How do you know?
I don't know that you do. I just think you gotta I don't know that. I mean, I loved what Cheryl said earlier about get yourself out of your comfort zone and go to different countries, etc. And I totally agree with that. But I also think no one has a crystal ball, you know? Who the hell knows? I think right now we may be in a situation in the US where it's a really exciting time to tell stories. You know, out of great disruption comes great opportunity, and I really believe that. So it may be a time where, you know, digging in the US and telling those alternative stories to underserved audiences is exactly what you want to do.
And then the story that you would tell here will be a different story than that you would tell there. So why don't you tell both stories? 2 for 1, right? That's what I say. Keep telling the stories. Like, they'll be different everywhere you go, right? But then you'll know that the kind of storyteller that you are, right? And I think that discovery of like, okay, I'm this kind of storyteller, and then I have something, and people are going to gravitate toward me because I tell these kind of stories. Like, there's, you know, some directors that kind of tell the same stories, but you go to them because you love them, and they're telling the same story but different. And you're like, wow, I like Godard's films. I like whomever's films, right? Because they're comforting, they're different, but there's something the same, and they're familiar, but they're revelation in a different way. So start where you are, start in the moment now, tell the story, get it done, and then go elsewhere and see if you can tell that story. Again, I would say with Christine, I feel that right now, to do what I do in the States, I'm really excited, and I feel like I'm gonna get the shit done right now. I'm gonna say that it's a great moment to be telling stories there. But I'm also when I come to these festivals and things like this, I'm like, it's a great moment to tell a story here too. It's a great moment to tell a story in Romania. You know, it's a great moment to tell a story in, you know, Saigon. Like, I want to go tell a story there too. Like, I have so many versions of that story to tell elsewhere. But then I realize also I'm not that storyteller. Like, that's not my story to tell. Let me let somebody else. And how can I help them make that story? And that's sort of where I'm ending up on my, you know, side of the rainbow. Is like, you know, it's not for me to go in and tell the black lesbian story in Saigon. You know, it's like, let me help somebody there tell their story. And that's what I need to do. And step aside, you know. And that's what I'm trying to do, is like a little dance move.
All right. One last thing. 1 or 2 films in the last 10 years we all have to watch. Mine would be Woman King and 120 Beats Per Minute. What is yours?
I'm spent. I gotta go to the next thing.
I can't think of one quickly. No, I can't think of one so easily. But
That's 2 on the spot after 2 hours of talking.
1.5. Okay. We're done. Thank you so much for being here.